Welcome to the Klazar podcast, everyone. It is here where we talk about some incredible GTM leaders in the tech space to benefit from their practical experiences and learn from their success stories. Today, we are talking to Laura Ripans from Datadog, and I'm so excited for all of us to get to hear from her. A little bit of a background about Laura, not that she needs one, but just an attempt from my side. Laura is the Senior Director of Cloud Alliances at Datadog, where she has been busy scaling it to great success since she was brought on almost 6 years ago. She previously served as the AWS Alliance Manager at Splunk and has held various positions at IBM and CompuWare. The most interesting fact is she has a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science from a prestigious and pioneering RPI Institute, as well as an MBA, providing her a unique perspective from a product standpoint into the GTM role. Laura has been featured on the illustrious CRN Women of the Channel list not once but 5 years in a row, and it doesn't stop there. She's also been named one of the AWS Female Game Changers in Tech in 2023. Laura, super excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Trinal. What a privilege to be here. And I love that introduction. It's really nice.
Thank you so much. All right, Laura. So I'm going to jump straight in. There's so much to talk about and so little time. So let's dive straight into your experience and some of these questions that we've been, talking about for a few weeks now. But you were Datadog's first channel/alliance partner hire, tasked to set up the whole program. I have two questions for you here, Laura. First one, what were the initial organizational expectations from the partnership function at the time when you were brought on board? And secondly, what was your first course of action towards building this from the ground up?
Yeah, really good question. So I just want to start out by saying I have a lot of admiration for you, Trinal, your company, Klazar. I'm coming to you today from Lake George, New York, which is incredibly exciting for me. I come here every year with my family, so that's just nice for me to be doing this. To your question, so back in 2019, that's when I joined Datadog. The Datadog leadership, they knew that something needed to be happening in the realm of co-sell, go-to-market with the cloud alliances. They knew it was an imperative part of maturing. At the time, I don't actually think they necessarily knew exactly what to expect. I'm not sure the expectations were all that high. Uh, the funny thing is, when I joined, the job description was just do what you think is right. That was my entire job description, which is great. So certainly appreciate the trust. And so that's what I did. I got down to work. I created a job description for myself first and foremost. I set up a plan, organized salesforce.com so everything could be reportable because that's really, really important. And then was super excited to roll it out. But what happened was I actually got a really good lesson when I did my first internal presentation to our enterprise sales teams. This is how Cloud Alliances is going to work at Datadog. About 10 minutes in, I was stopped by the regional vice president at the time. And he said, Laura, we don't know what you're talking about. I got a really good lesson. It still resonates with me today. But the lesson is that what we do with Cloud Alliance, especially in co-sell and go-to-market, it's not always obvious. And so even to this day, the internal education and what we do and the value and why Cloud Alliances make sense for many of our opportunities, we have to continue to educate both with the clouds and internally at Datadog.
That's a fantastic story, by the way, Laura. Like I can imagine being in that room and trying to convince people and just have that conversation and going in a certain
Yeah,
direction.
it didn't go exactly as I expected, but yeah, I learned a great lesson. So yeah, really
And then
humble.
the other thread that I wanted to pull on, Laura, a little bit is you said use the word trust, which is something that we use a lot internally at Klazar. And we'll talk about Datadog founders and the company, how fantastic business they've built. But help us understand a little bit about Datadog's culture. Like having a job description like, hey, go do the right thing is such powerful and liberating in so many ways. So help us talk through that a little bit with us.
Yeah. So in terms of culture, it's fantastic. And, I've seen the company go from 1,000 employees to now we're over 6,000. So 1 to 6, that's quite a big change.
Huge.
The culture is incredible. I'm actually incredibly proud. of the Datadog culture and what they've built. They've really created this culture of just, I think the thing I hear the most, I get to actually talk to a lot of people at the company, just given the nature, and it's just how helpful people are. So I think above and beyond, we talk on Slack all the time. You know, we try really hard to get to answers quickly. I always say to people, "Hey, look, I've been here for a long time. Don't ever struggle. Ping me for anything. I don't care what it is." But it's a culture of really helping each other and lifting each other up. Right? We're all working to the same goal. We all work with the same sales methodology, and at the end of the day, it's a culture of serving the customer and working backwards from the customer so that ultimately they can be delighted and successful on their cloud journeys.
That's fantastic. Similar culture that, one day I wish, the small culture that we have right now balloons into and blossoms into this culture that you have. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
it's really important. But it was a culture change with the Cloud Alliance because I'll tell you when I first arrived, I, again, not obvious. Why would a big hyperscaler want to help me, a seller? You know, it just wasn't obvious. So just kind of getting that now, I'd say is completely natural part of the process. But it took time and change to understand why that makes sense.
And then Laura, like, what was that first step that you took when you took the job on? Like, what was that literally the first thing that you went to your team or your leadership peers or the group and said, "Hey, this is what we're going to do."
Yeah, I mean the good news is I came in with a lot of experience. I was hired for that experience, and to do that with all three clouds and in a global fashion. The trick is to try to create repeatable, simple to follow processes that just work. So really understanding Datadog, understanding what Datadog is trying to do, right? The guidance that we got from our COO Adam was, he says, bring your experience, but don't bring your playbook. So it's really custom built with the experience, but for Datadog, right? I wouldn't expect it to look the same necessarily anywhere else, but really just getting it out there. Because the company ran or runs on Slack so much, I decided that was a great forum. And then the other thing is it's got to be in our CRM, salesforce.com. The mantra is if it's not in salesforce.com, it didn't happen. So we have to be very reportable. We have to really just be able to show the value that it's bringing from a go to market perspective. So really just laying down that foundation, and then it's just opportunity by opportunity. We work. It's just work.
So almost like it feels like you joined like what 6 years ago. So at the time the company must have been small. So it's almost like the whole startup grind that we talk about, which is go opportunity by opportunity, figure out what the existing playbooks are, where you'll have maximum impact, and then kind of take it from that angle. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, exactly. And of course, given that we are a SaaS company, right, born on the cloud, designed to keep the cloud safe and secure and well monitored, uh, there's always one or more clouds involved, right? It's just the nature of the beast. So because of the product, we are always working with one or more cloud in everything we do. So it makes sense. It's the obvious choice.
So yeah, Laura, continuing on that theme, like Datadog is built on those either migrating to or expanding on the clouds, one or multiple clouds, and has applicability across industries. And I wanted to pick your brain on a couple things there. One is, given the nature of your product, are cloud alliances the obvious strategic choice, or are there other specific considerations at play? And you touched upon it briefly, but I would love for you to expand there. And then a follow up to that is, since you cater to multiple industries, like literally Datadog, I've seen, I've myself worked at like Airbnb, LinkedIn, Confluent, all of these companies. Everyone, I've been a fortunate engineer to be able to use Datadog at those companies. Since you cater to multiple industries, do you see any variations in procurement trends that you need to take into account while building your alliances and partnership strategy?
Yeah. So, two questions there. I'll take them one at a time. So, first, yes, cloud alliances. I do think it's the obvious choice. So, again, in the context of go to market, co sell, Uh, Again, it's not an imperative. So every opportunity, we don't have to do anything, right? It's always really what's going to serve that customer and that
Hmm.
opportunity at the time. But certainly in everything we do, one or more clouds will be involved. And so the question is, do we want to co-sell? Do we want to involve a cloud provider as part of that? And a lot of times customers even ask us, like, hey, would you mind go asking one of the clouds to explain our environment? They understand, and it's a wonderful thing when that happens. We can target our message, do a much more thoughtful POC, for example. And clouds kind of feel like you've done your homework, so it really is making sense.
Hmm.
But again, it's all about the customer. Who's important to your customer? Who's got influence? Who's in the customer's ecosystem? And then I'll just add another point. This is true of all partners, right? So Datadog has channel partners, of course. We have system integrators, we have MSPs, resellers, right? And so again, who's important to the end customer? Who's in their orbit, their ecosystem? And again, the more companies, the more partners, the more trusted advisors to that customer that are chirping Datadog, the better. And of course, the more comfortable the customer will be. To the second part of your question, Trunel, on procurement. Well, yes, of course. Uh, I mean, we have to talk about marketplace. Cloud marketplaces have truly transformed the way software is both bought and sold. You could read anything, right? I mean, unless you've been living under a rock or something, Canalys has plenty of data on this. 45 billion will be transacted in 2025 on cloud marketplaces. I mean, it's just an explosion. So I think marketplace has been unbelievably transformative to many, many customers and future customers, and even partners, right? Depending on what's important from a customer procurement, how they want to buy, they have options. They can, of course, buy direct, and they can buy through resellers, and they can buy through marketplaces. There's many ways to acquire software, but I think marketplace has been the biggest titanic shift that I've seen.
And we are going to talk about marketplaces a lot soon enough. But before then, Laura, I actually wanted to steal a quote from you, the one that you use, which is technology sales is a team sport. Like partnership alliances is one of the most interconnected GTM functions, with the partner alliances leaders serving as the unifier of efforts across sales, customer success, finance, legal, marketing, and all the entire GTM engine, right? Now, how do you facilitate these interconnectivity from both a mindset and more importantly, from a process standpoint?
Yeah, true. Now that's the $100 million question. I wish I had it all figured out, right? I wish life would be great. Um, it's a constant evolution, right? It is. I do believe it's a team sport. Um, and because of all the departments that you just mentioned, from sales and customer success and finance and legal and enterprise sales and product and engineering and integrations. I mean, there's a lot of components that go into the company. From the partner motion, I always talk about the COs, the COs, the COs, the co-build, the co-market, the co-sell, and then if you want to even add in co-retain, those are the pillars that we work. So two perspectives, inside out and then outside in. So inside out, inside Datadog, out, we touch so many departments, right? It's great. It's really gratifying and rewarding, I have to say. I really, really enjoy getting to know the whole parts of the company. I'm genuinely interested in how corporations operate. So the needs and requirements, for example, of Datadog's customer success team, right? They're different than the needs of our commercial sellers. Customer success
Mhm.
deals with all existing. Commercial sellers are, trying to break into new customers and new markets and new countries and geographies. So we create standards, like I mentioned earlier. We have standards in our CRM, Salesforce.com. That is really important that we all work there. But we also, I've been working more recently just with a lot of lists. So we go to the departments and ask, what's important to you? What do you need? Tell us. I just say to people, tell us what you need. And then we almost work backwards from those requirements. So in a sense, you could think that the other departments within Datadog are, they're involved in what we do, but we try to just work the priorities, which I think is the hardest part of my job, and just keep it very well organized, and then just work on the priorities. We can't do it all. We know something's going to fall off the plate, so we really just try to work in the priorities and keep up to the direction of the company as Datadog continues to grow and evolve. And I would say, the converse, right? So from an outside in perspective, we really really have to respect everybody's goals, right? So when we ask a partner, can we work with you? Can we get some help? Can we co-sell? Could we possibly get a warm introduction? Again, it's we need to make sure all the tides are rising, that everybody is winning, right? You can't have a win lose. It's got to be a win win, and hopefully a win win win, right? A win for the customer, a win for the partner, and hopefully a win for Datadog, right? If we have our druthers. So again, the processes need to be there. All three cloud providers have their own portals. Datadog has Datadog Partner Network, or DPN, as we finally call it, which is where those partners work. So again, just understanding everybody's goal, right? Making sure that, I call it something for everyone, right? Or everybody gets a piece of pizza, whatever. Just make sure that everybody is taken care of, so that we can have a good partnership, and we try to be a good partner.
Got it. And Laura, you mentioned the different cores of a partnership,
Mhm.
and I'm sure the audience is very well aware of the first three cores, but the core retain one is a new and perhaps a innovative one. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about what that means and how people can think about it?
Yeah, of course. So co-build, co-market, co-sell, co-retain. Well, remember, if you're in SaaS, if you have a SaaS offering, if you have a month to month or pay as you go, right, which you can clearly see on the datadog.com/pricing page, it's very obvious. Customers could come for a month and then leave, right? There's no obligation. So it's kind of the try before you buy, but then, it could be month to month. So in other words, a customer could leave quickly. The goal is to not have them do that, right? Just like a subscription to anything. Netflix wants to keep you for a year. Do you sign up for a year, a month? So in a subscription model, it's really important to try and get those customers to stay and become sticky and stay with you and want to do that. And so the conversion of getting them to stay and perhaps making an annual commitment, for example, that's a co-retain. And again, working with the clouds, they can help us do that, right? Perhaps working and having a month to month then convert through a marketplace. Again, it makes them a bit more
Mm,
sticky. So that's a really, really great motion. So, but again, keeping them delighted, really understanding, of course, the clouds want to also retain customers and have them continue with their services, right? And again, we try to just make sure the customer is successful wherever they are on their cloud journey. But as long as they're on a cloud journey, we certainly hope that they stay with us for monitoring.
got it. And that's the what I would say is the other end of co-sell. Like co-sell doesn't stop just at selling, but also the retaining piece of it. And that's where the clouds can also come help out, which not many people realize, but it's actually a real thing.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's really important to call out, just putting my software seller's hat back on, because I was sold software for many many years. It when you close the deal from a sales perspective, right, it doesn't mean the customer's out of pain. It just means a transaction happened. So that's when the real work starts. Now the customer has to start using the software, they have to start consuming, and they really need to become successful with the product, right? That's when the magic begins to happen. So once the customer is starting to use your solution, when they're in production, when they're up and running, they're successful, things are humming, that's truly when it's success. And I think it's just really important to remember that, right? Just because you close a transaction doesn't mean the customer's in production and up and running and successful. So that's the whole journey. And that feeds into, are they going to buy again, right? Like when you co-retain, you certainly hope that they continue, but you have to continue to delight that customer over and over to retain them. It's like anything else.
Absolutely. So, Laura, one thing I've seen you mention, and this is a common thread that we've seen across many of the amazing partnership leaders that we get to speak to, and that is the emphasis on a tripartite value creation for customers, partners, and business on the win win win. You touched upon it briefly just in our discussion just now. But when building from scratch, how do you ensure that you direct efforts towards this goal on a continuous fashion?
Yeah. So you've certainly had some incredible podcasts, Trinell, right? You've got the Giants, Michael, Pete, Di, these are these are great people. So well done there. People I all very much admire and respect. I love the win-win-win, the power of three, the tripartite. There's a few different names we can call it. Again, we're just trying to make sure that the customer is well served. So, and there's kind of a spectrum of ways, right? Um, you know, my perspective is again working from the customer. How do they like to buy? How do they like to consume? Do they want to get their hands on keyboard with Datadog? Do they want to have Datadog delivered as a service, right? So I think it's really just important to understand how the customer likes to operate, how they like to procure, and how they just like to run the business, if you will. And so, who's important to that customer? Is it a hyperscaler? Is it a system integrator? Is it a consulting company? Is it a legal company? Is it their accounting company? Is it a small boutique? Is it another ISV that sort of has a seat at the table of trust? So, and again, thinking about all that, my goal is never not to make more meetings than needed, right? We never try to have, involve too many. We don't want to complicate anything either. So it's trying to get that balance in terms of co-sell and the co-sell function, who's in that customer circle of trust. If we are not in that customer or a future customer circle of trust, who is, and try to work with them and influence them. So it's all about the problem we're trying to solve. There always has to be something we're trying to solve, and working from that. Is Datadog a fit? Who is important? Who has managed to get to that customer and earn their trust? And how can we get to that point too? So I think just to kind of sum it up in terms of attempting to get a pro Datadog decision, you've got to create that value. And if you don't have a seat at the table of the inner circle of trust, then work with the companies who do. Very, very often, it is one or more cloud providers that are up there.
Got it. Fantastic. All right, Laura. Now we can go a little bit deeper into both of our favorite topic, which is marketplaces and cloud alliances in a little bit more deeper way. But before that, this, like, I'm a huge admirer of Ollie, the co-founder and CEO of Datadog, and his specifically the approach that he took in the very early days. I was fascinated by a video recording, an interview that he did a few days ago, where he mentioned that they implemented the monthly cancellation subscription on day one in the Datadog product, because Ollie wanted to make sure that the product that the company is building is the one that is loved by the customers, and they want to pay for it on a recurring basis versus having to lock in for a year, right? Fantastic insights, and a courageous leader, I would say. Now, in this environment, which is extremely high standards, and there's a leader who's pursuing an excellence, and he wants to put the customers at the forefront of everything. How do you evaluate and leverage cloud partnership to enhance the product experience from deployment to utility?
Yeah, so I'll start out by saying that I too am a great admirer of Ollie and the entire Datadog leadership. They are very smart, they are incredibly humble, and they have a pretty good sense of humor too, which I certainly enjoy. Datadog, as you know, it's an engineering company, right? We're an engineering company, we're a manufacturing company, we manufacture software. They figured out so many things right, and one of the things that the co-founders who still lead us today that they figured out correctly is they figured out a way to make observability and security of the cloud delightful. If this can be
Ooh.
delightful, I think they figured it out. They created a way to start using Datadog that is so low or maybe no friction. Again, not everybody has the privilege to work with a product that you can so easily begin to use. You can literally go to datadog.com and download it. Anyone can. You can. Any of your relatives can. Like, anyone you know can do this, and you can just start using it for a 14-day free trial. You can buy one host for $18 and you get the whole platform. It's amazing. And again, that is part of the reason I think behind the success, because it is just so easy to get started, and they've tried to make it that way. So we actually have a saying at Datadog that Datadog is simple but not simplistic. So what that means is, again, it's simple to use. You can get up and running, but certainly what's behind the scenes is not at all simplistic. There's so much going on to make a product that looks like one platform, same look and feel, ease of use. So that in itself, I think, is just incredible. The also what I just described is a self-service nature. The self-service nature of Datadog, it just gets it into the hands of people so quickly. Um, in terms of just the way the company where they're going, it's all about workloads. So the consumption of services, the consumption of cloud services. When it comes to the clouds, I would have to say Datadog goes where the clouds go, and Datadog goes where the customers are going with their cloud journey. So we meet the customer wherever they're at on their cloud journeys, at their speed, right, at their course and speed. That's where we meet them. The other thing is Datadog is fantastic at monitoring so many services, so many integrations out of the box, over 750. And with that, I'll just give a couple of examples. We're fantastic at monitoring containers, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless. We're just excellent at it, right? It's not that easy to monitor serverless because it's serverless. But we try to keep all that going in a product-led growth way. We just, again, go back to the codes. We co-build, we co-market, we co-sell. It's a lot of awareness, a lot of education, all across the board, right, to the customers internally and with all our partners and the cloud providers.
Yeah, and then the excellence of product is definitely shown through. Like I was taking a look at Datadog's marketplaces strategy as well. Across, definitely across all clouds, definitely across multi services. That just tells you the focus from the company, and especially leaders such as yourself, who have really understood and pushed that strategy across the board, across in the deep weeds and deep the DNA of the company, which is fantastic to see.
That's right. Yes, Datadog has been on the cloud marketplaces for a very long time.
Laura, a different kind of an angle to cloud partnerships, and the places that I've worked at, I have this experience as well, and I wanted to pick your brain on it. Is sometimes the hyperscalers also have a competing service and a competing partner that can perhaps be in the same space, right? How has your experience been in operating in that environment, and what do you think has worked? Some of the things that you've seen work for our audience to take a tip from.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, Trunella. It's a good one. You know, we all know each other very well, right? So certainly, Datadog is in a highly competitive space. Certainly, our partners, also have competitors. The cloud providers, we all know that. I think the point is, it's very important to be respectful. It's very important to continue to maintain that trust, so we can overtly talk about it, right? Um, we can decide to not co-sell on an opportunity. So, for example, if there is a competitor working, we can just respectfully say, it doesn't make sense on this one. Let's move on and find another one. We can talk about that. But I think really just respecting, we do quite a lot under NDA, of course. And so I think it's just, it's the industry itself, right? again, we're all trying to win the business. We're all trying to serve the customer. I'm certainly hoping customers make a pro Datadog decision, but we know that everybody has choice. So really overtly talking about it, I think that's the key. Call it out. If there's any question or concern, call it out. And remember, you can't always say no or no, not now.
Yeah, and to add to that, Laura, what I would say is my experience over the years has always been also been similar, where I feel like the hyperscalers are quite fair, and they, if you understand their business model, they're actually more than, even though they have competing products within their own portfolio, they actually put it out there in a way that it's a fair chance for the customer to pick a product that is best suited for them. So there's all this talk of, hey, hyperscalers may or may not be giving us the business if we compete with them directly. I see that a lot from specifically like newer founders who are coming to this space, and I tell them all the time, like, no, hey, this is, I mean, that's not something that you should be worried about, especially at this stage or at any stage ever, to be really honest with you, because the systems that have been set up and by these massive companies actually quite fantastic and fair.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And again, it just speaks to you got to be differentiated, right? If you're not a differentiated solution, what are you doing? So you got to maintain your talk track, your differentiation, and make that understood. From a Datadog perspective, we are very fortunate that if a customer is multi-cloud or hybrid, that's always going to give us something that we can talk about. Or make those other services better. But again, we're pretty lucky in the Venn diagram. We don't have a ton of overlap. We're nowhere near a circle. It is much more of a spread out Venn diagram. So we don't encounter that actually too much, which is great.
Awesome. Laura, you briefly touched upon this during this chat, and I've also seen your content online. But I've seen you credit the contribution of your engineering team in building a strong cloud alliances, right? As co-building with the hyperscalers is an integral part of the relationship and strengthening that relationship with them. Could you speak a little bit about the technical aspects or the engineering lift involved in deepening these multi-cloud hyperscaler alliances, and how you, as the alliance leader, convince slash facilitate the engineering side of the house?
Absolutely. So I think one of my favorite parts about Datadog is that we are an engineering company, right? We are definitely an engineering company. We happen to be headquartered in the New York Times building. So I think that in and of itself is kind of cool. Who puts an engineering company in the New York Times building? you know. So again, part of the crazy, wonderfulness why I joined, we are a product led company, right? I mean, without that, we are nothing. And so I have to give all the credit to our builders and our engineers for the amazing product that they have provided. It's a privilege that we get to work with it. I think all my colleagues feel the same way, right? It's those integration specialists, it's the strong solutions, it's trying to figure out exactly what the customers want and what they want next. Um, we're in the business of full scale observability and security of the cloud, right? But having a product like Datadog actually makes my job much more delightful, much easier, I would have to say. We've been spending more time as a Cloud Alliance team with our product team than ever before because, well, we need to know all the latest and greatest messaging. And we're getting bigger and bigger, and the product is getting to be, it's a platform, really, I should say, so that the platform has gotten to the point where we just really need to understand the full spectrum because we are talking about ourselves as a platform. So it's not just infrastructure monitoring, application performance monitoring, and logs, but we're now a platform of well over 25 products. And again, that's what I think customers want now is they want platforms that do a lot of things. They don't necessarily want to have, hundreds and hundreds of vendors. They want fewer vendors, more capabilities. Uh, and, creating that with the hyperscalers, there is always the overarching goal to have that kind of parity among functionality across clouds. So again, from that context, we need to understand the nuances there. so that wherever the customer's cloud provider is, we can make sure that we understand, exactly where the product is at, and can explain that, because not everything gets released exactly on the same time. So we need to understand all those nuances too. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually wanted to ask a follow up to that one, Laura. Like we talked about engineering specifically, but I know you're also a huge fan of like percolating success stories across the org, not just to engineering and with engineering, but with others, including the hyperscalers, right? And that's, I agree, is a great way to keep all internal stakeholders
Yeah.
posted about the impact of partnerships and alliances motion. And Datadog has a lot of strong collateral built in collaboration with the hyperscalers as well. So, couple thoughts in that area, or a couple questions is how do you work with your cloud partners to build these success stories and resources? And what kind of cadence, like if let's say if I'm trying to build my own sort of a co-marketing motion with the hyperscalers, what cadence would you recommend that I, when I'm starting out, look at?
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's start with the last thing you said first. So it's really helpful to have a quarterly goal. That's what we do. So every quarter, we target a certain number of publicly referenceable, meaning we
Mm,
have permission to
mm.
tell that story. It's much more impactful when we can actually get a quote from the customer. That's a really good thing to include. But people want to hear stories. I think that's what everybody remembers, right? I mean, think back to any meeting you ever attended last year or the year before. I mean, do you remember anything anybody said? But you might remember a story that you heard. So stories are really just human nature, what people are going to remember. And if you go onto the Datadog website, you can clearly see some of our public references. Airbnb, I actually love that story. We tell the Airbnb story in our onboarding, because the way Airbnb uses Datadog, it's a bit unique. They've taken application performance monitoring, right, and the interdependencies between applications, and that's how they onboard their engineers and builders. So that's how they learn the Airbnb system, through looking at the visualizations of Datadog dashboards, which is a really, really cool way to use application performance monitoring, right? And which app is talking to which app. So it's a great story. It's easy to remember. I learned it 6 years
Mm.
ago. I still remember it. And we have videos and testimonials from our Dash conference, right? And other great companies. You can see their stories and across industries. Nasdaq, HashiCorp is a great customer. Capgem, Porsche, Instacart, Zendesk, Eurostar, internationally. And it's also really important to have those stories across industries and across geographies. Ideally, even in language, but whatever you can do. But it all builds, right. The stories are what people want to hear, because they can relate. Like, oh, okay, I understand that Airbnb needed to onboard. Maybe that's a good way for me to use. Or I'm going to adopt a ton of serverless, and you can see how customers have done that, or containers that they're modernizing while they're on the cloud journey. So I think it's just how we relate. And it's really important to have those stories to give you that credibility, and just to explain your value proposition in a easy to consume way.
And I'll talking about stories. I will give you an Airbnb story. Maybe that you can take it back to Oli and use it. But before that, what cadence do you think is right? Is like once a month, once a quarter, or more than that? Like what have you seen work
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would say quarterly. So, for example, if you want to
quarterly?
try to do 3 stories a quarter, I mean, they take more time than you think for some reason. So again, it's getting the permission from the customer,
Mm,
depending upon, I think, your policy, if it needs to go through any kind of proofreading, if it needs to go through any kind of legal, whatever your policy is. But you need to make sure that you're doing it in a way, because if it's going to ultimately end up on your website, it's got to go through the processes. But I think coming up with a number, two, three a quarter, is really reasonable. And really just also being able to talk through the use cases themselves. You want to have lots and lots of those readily
mm,
available. Doesn't have to have a named customer there, just the problem you're solving and how you solved it.
got it. All right. Are you ready for the my version of Airbnb story, Laura?
Yes, I I didn't see how a version. So please, what do you
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned Airbnb and there's like a playbook and all of that. I wasn't aware of it, so I joined Airbnb in 2014, pretty early, like 10 years ago. And at the time, I was an engineer, and I was like, I wasn't on the infrastructure side, I was on the application side. And some engineering friend of mine shared this link to this thing called Datadog, which I had no idea what it was. I was trying to monitor something in the payments or that section of the code base, and I get this link, and there's this like logo of a puppy holding a like a envelope, and I'm like, what is this thing? But then slowly but surely, I just got hooked onto the product, and I've used Datadog for like four companies right after that. So that was my introduction to Datadog at Airbnb, and it's funny that you have a story as well. So.
That's great. Well, thank you for being a Datadog customer, Trunal. We absolutely appreciate it. That's a great story.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. All right. And then, Laura, what are some of the other ways? Like one is, of course, talking to, having these stories and putting them out there and having a really good narrative around it. What are some of the other ways that we can actually increase our influence within the hyperscalers? Maybe talking to account managers, PDMs, or what have you seen?
Yeah, I would say a ton. There's a ton. Um, the trick is you got to pick the ones that are going to be the most effective. So, just to name several, you've got events, you've got immersion days, you've got hackathons, you've got ISV days. Um, we could even just join a hyperscaler team call and give an alliance update for 15 minutes, right? You can just go have regular meetings. So we actually, there's a few different buckets, right? So let's just take a couple in stride. So events, I think everybody's aware of various cloud events and how much you want to participate and sponsor. So there's that. Of course, the I think the most valuable thing you can do with a cloud provider is be with the customers, right? So that is the ultimate when you're with the customers. But it's also appropriate sometimes to just be with a hyperscaler, just to talk about like, hey, this is how we work together. This is our better together story, right? And just really make that understood. Datadog, for example, if you look on our website, you can see we have an ambassador program. So
Hmm.
we can actually provide credentialing and certifications to any of our partners that want to have those certifications and credentials in Datadog. It makes sense given the nature of Datadog. I don't know if that makes sense for everyone. The partner managers, of course, at the hyperscalers, they absolutely let us know about various programs. There are certain marketplace programs, for example, that might make sense. But I think in the co-sell context, when account managers, when AEs, when they come together and just talk deeply about that customer, that's really where the magic happens, right?
Hmm.
So it's all getting to that point. Again, we're not here to be computer science projects. We're really just at the end of the day, it's our obligation to the business to sell more software, right? That's what we're trying to do, and then all the things that we do to do that lead up to serving that customer so they can be successful on their cloud journey, hopefully with Datadog. So I think you've got to figure out there's more than you can do. So you need to prioritize. Like I said earlier, that's probably the hardest part of our job because there's too many things to do and not enough time to do them all. But the awareness is key because what might make sense in Q1 may not make sense in Q4, right? So I think it depends exactly what you're trying to accomplish in any given month, any given quarter. Maybe there's more closing events happening, for example, at the end, and maybe there's more awareness things when people are just getting their accounts at the beginning. So you really have to understand where everybody is at on their journey. Not everybody has the same fiscal year, so just where you can be most effective when. And if people just got their account yesterday, they may not know everybody who's doing the zoo. So you got to just be aware, right? Just normal business.
Yeah, that's such a good tip. Like you have to align your operations to the hyperscalers operations at such certain key moments. because otherwise, the effort that you put in may go wasted in certain ways if they don't really have their account list, shared with them as an
Yeah,
example.
it's very, very important. So again, that's all part of understanding each other's business and motivations and where they're at, and coming together when and only if and when it makes sense.
All right, Laura, talking about computer science, and like I said before, you come from a technical background with computer science degree from an incredible institution. And over the course of your career, you've transitioned from a technical side of the house and to the GTM side of the role with great success. I'm curious to know what color your technical background added to your current role, and if it presents you with any unique perspectives in your approach to solving this GTM and alliances role.
Yeah, it is actually something I talk about. I think one of the most recent big surprises of my life, quite frankly, is that being a computer nerd is somehow cool now. I don't think it was always, I don't think it was always cool, but I always just loved programming, computer science, everything about it. I discovered computers back in high school when I was 14 in New Jersey, and I never changed that. I kind of feel like I didn't change all that much. Um, when I look now at what computing is, I think back to the days when I was programming at IBM on the mainframe, right? And now just there's so much out there. There's just so much more tech out there. It's incredible. It's exciting. There's always something fresh and new, never boring. And I sometimes, secretly pretend like if I had had Datadog back in the day, just how much easier my life probably would have been. Um, for example, I was programming internally at IBM in a telecom space, and hopefully I didn't push too many bugs into production. But again, if I had had a tool like Datadog, there just would have been so many more guardrails. There would have been a concept of CI/CD, right? Didn't wasn't even a thing. Um, so all those things, they stay with you and they build, and I think those fundamentals serve you forever. I think that some of the basics of computer science still persist in just different instantiations, right? Whether it's the mainframe and then into client server and internet and cloud, it's all still down to that logic. And I do often say that I at some point went into consulting, and then at some point I went into software selling, and then at some point I went into this cloud alliance thing, which I'm still overjoyed. I discovered, I guess, almost 10 years ago now. Whew, that's a long time.
Wow.
I know. 10 years. But that's how you get good at things, right? You got to do your 10,000 hours. You got to put the work in. You got to be a learn it all, not a know it all, whatever. And I do say I am a software seller kind of disguised as a cloud alliance person, right? Again, just that is our obligation to the business. We got to make the number. And so, to talk credibly about Datadog and to talk, why should I listen to a person like Laura Ripans talk about Datadog? It's well, I think your life is going to be easier with Datadog, and here are the reasons why, right? Without kind of doing a sales pitch here or anything, but just try to relate to the customer. The customer is trying to adopt this, that, and the other thing, with or without Datadog. Is it going to be better? And you got to prove it, and you've got to prove it with math and science. And we typically we'll do a proof of concept, for example. I mean, there's many ways to prove it. We tell the stories, we show other companies alike, but just being able to relate the end users, quite frankly, are many, many hands on keyboard. Of course, we do have business users that look at the dashboard too. So being able to explain to it whatever way they're going to use, and being able to relate to it as an end user, I think that's there. It's kind of an engineering solution built by engineers for engineers, and it makes it really relatable. So I am very proud of the fact that Datadog is that engineering company. It's a comfortable place for me. It's where I feel like I've always been.
Mm.
But to be able to talk about it and kind of like feel like I could imagine what life would have been like. I truly believe my life would have been a lot easier had I had a Datadog back in the day.
Back in the day, for sure. And final question from me, Laura, a closing question for you. You've been in the industry for a long time, industry veteran, of course. But who do you think along the way has either helped you or you followed that the audience can learn from even in today's day and age?
You know, there's a ton, so I'm just going to talk about recent. But certainly, there are a lot of great minds. Some of the people that I follow, I'll mention now, and if you'd like to take a look, maybe this will give you something that you'd like to listen to. There's a gentleman named Professor Scott Galloway, or Prof G. He has a podcast. He actually is a professor at Stern School of Business, or NYU. He wrote The Algebra of Wealth. And he's just someone that I really think his ideas just kind of resonate with me. He's also a very big proponent of helping young men do well in their careers, and I'm a big proponent of that too. I have a son, I have a nephew. You probably know somebody that has a son or a nephew if you don't, but I really think it's important to to help young people in their careers, and he's really good at that, and he's out there. He tells it like it is. I think he's great. In terms of partnerships, alliances, certainly Jay McBain, right? I'm sure everybody listening to this knows him, the godfather of the modern ecosystem. Vince Menzione, of course, right? Ultimate partner.com, the best. Alan Adler, I like him a lot too. Digital Bridge, and Jared Fuller, Nearbound. So those are some of the ones. So Scott Galloway, Jay McBain, Vince Menzione, Alan Adler, Jared Fuller are some of the people that have influenced me in most recent years.
Fantastic. Those are some amazing names, Laura. Thank you so much for sharing. And Laura, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I've had a wonderful time talking with you. It's been a episode worth its weight in gold. I'm sure the audience is going to enjoy so much of it. But thank you so much for coming and spending the time with us.
Thanks for having me.